Miami shocked the world almost as much as Indiana did by making the national championship this past season, especially after suffering two losses to unranked teams and barely making the college football playoff field on what was at the time a controversial decision. Nobody expected the Hurricanes to make it all the way to the national championship, let alone give the undefeated Hoosiers a really close game. Overall, it was a phenomenal season for Miami. They ended up going 13 and 3, and that was better than our prediction of 9 and 3. Projected total wins was 8.0 and 4.0. I think we just expected Miami to do or to have a couple more of those losses in the regular season than they actually did. I guess they went 10 and 2 in the regular season. We weren't really that far off. We had two of them in the ACC. So overall, I feel like it makes sense that Miami just barely outperformed our expectations there. And with the offseason that they had, I don't think we're going to underestimate them this next season.
And that's because this team got absolutely gutted after that national championship game run, losing most of their starters on both sides of the ball, only returning three offensive starters, those being Mark Fletcher, Malachi Tony, and I believe one other wide receiver or maybe someone on the offensive line. And then defensively, the entire defensive line is essentially gone, as well as a majority of the secondary. It's essentially going to be a brand new team in Miami, and we're going to have to see if that ends up leading to some success because we've seen teams built in the transfer portal absolutely succeed, like Indiana last season and like Texas Tech last season. But we've also seen that it can fail you at times. So we'll just have to see how that ends up going for the Hurricanes. Now, for recruiting, high school recruiting rank is at number 10. The U is coming back, so that's why they are now into the top 10. And then that transfer portal ranking has skyrocketed in the last week after their major acquisitions, which I will get to in just a moment. And that overall ranking is now at number 8. And those two major additions that got them the number 4 transfer portal class is the addition of two Duke players, quarterback Darian Mensah and wide receiver Cooper Barkate, or Barkat, whatever his pronunciation is. Excuse me. But the addition of those two to this offense, along with guys on the defense like Omar Thornton, Damon Wilson II, as well as some other big time additions like Jarquez Carter as well. I do think this Miami transfer portal class is going to help them out a little bit. Obviously, you're just replacing so much NFL caliber talent that it's going to be hard to return to that level again. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. And getting Darian Mensah as your starting quarterback for next season, I think, is going to help them out immensely, considering that they didn't really have a good starting quarterback option after Carson Beck left. Now, for their grades, talent wise, it's an A plus, especially with the recent acquisitions. Needs wise, it's only going to be a B plus, and the reason for that, in my opinion, is the transfer portal class is on the smaller side for the amount of players that they are losing, and even with the players they are bringing in, they're only bringing in one offensive lineman, despite essentially the entire offensive line being gone and going off to the NFL or just running out of eligibility. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't go after a couple more offensive linemen, whether that is some of the top offensive linemen in the country or just some good three-star players. I'm just a little shocked that they didn't attack that position a little bit more compared to the fact that they dominated the defensive line in the transfer portal. So overall, that is going to come out to an A minus overall grade.
Now, their schedule this season, it's really not terrible. I mean, there's a few tough games on there. The road trip to Clemson's not easy. Road trip to Notre Dame rematch from week one of last year and going to be very controversial. Also not going to be easy. And then James Franklin's Hokies near the end of the year. But overall, the ACC, I feel like let them off just a little bit light this season, probably hoping that they can make another run towards the national championship. Now, those first three games, road trip to Stanford, kicking it off in ACC play right away. This one, I think, will be a pretty easy game. Stanford brought Davis Warren in, backup quarterback from Michigan, to compete for the starting job. I really don't think Stanford's going to be improved from last season. It feels like their transfer portal class was really just trying to fill the roster with enough players after losing guys. They didn't bring in as much talent as they lost. And for a team that was pretty bad last season, that's not good whatsoever. So 90% chance for Miami to start off the year 1-0. And then you have Florida A&M at home. That'll be a win. And then it's Wake Forest on the road. Now, Wake Forest got Gio Lopez from North Carolina to come in as their starter. I think that he's going to be okay. He was solid at North Carolina, but the Tar Heels didn't have a good season last year. Wake Forest also, I mean, they're going to be, I think, a decent team. They had a good record last season, but I'm just not as confident in this year's team. I feel like a lot of those players from last year that kind of flew under the radar, they have all kind of moved on. Wake Forest just didn't bring in, kind of similar to Stanford, they didn't bring in equal levels of talent to what they lost. So it feels like they are due for some regression this season, which leads me to believe that Miami should have at least an 85% chance here on the road.
After that, it's a game against Central Michigan, which is going to be an 100% chance for them to win that game. The talent disparity, even with how much Miami is losing, is grossly in favor of the Hurricanes. And then a road trip against Clemson, which in theory should be very interesting, but this is entirely dependent on if Clemson and Dabo Sweeney can right the ship because last season was pretty abysmal by the Tigers' standards. I mean, they barely got into a bowl game, and at a time, there was a chance they might not have even made a bowl game. It was looking so bad. And I don't know where it all went wrong. You had Cade Klubnik returning as your starting quarterback. You had two of the best defensive players on your roster. Dabo Swinney finally actually used the transfer portal last season as well, and nothing went right for the Tigers. Now they do bring Cade Klubnik back, but they are losing a good amount of that team from last year as well. So it's going to be kind of a similar situation for both these teams, and the fact that it's at Clemson gives them maybe a little bit of an advantage. But I'm going to trust Mario Cristobal surprisingly in this game. I do think that Miami has proven that they can win with the players they have returning on their team, especially with Mark Fletcher and Malachi Tony back on offense. That offense is going to be just fine with those two weapons along with Darian Mensah. I think he's going to fit in just fine in this Miami offense. Now they have a bye week after that before taking on an in-state rival in Florida State, and I really don't think the Seminoles are going to be too good this year. I do think that they will finally end up firing Mike Norvell by the end of the year, if not during the season. I don't think Ashton Daniels is the answer at quarterback. I don't think he's necessarily bad, but I really think it's a step down from Thomas Castellanos last season. And even then, he didn't play that great all the time. So I don't anticipate Florida State to be too competitive, but I mean, they shocked the world last year in week one with the win over Bama. And I think maybe they can pull off some major upsets throughout the season because they still have a lot of talented players. But this is one, especially with it at Miami, that I think the Hurricanes should be comfortably favorited and should end up walking away with another win.
Yeah, and before I move on to the next couple games, I just want to correct a couple things with the dates. Miami actually has three Friday night games this year. Stanford, Wake Forest, and Virginia Tech are all going to be one day earlier than that schedule says. But then moving back to the actual predictions, the Pitt game is going to be, I think, a really tough game. Pitt has a really solid team for next season. They might be flying under the radar just a little bit. I feel like with the amount of talent that they're bringing in, they should be pretty solid. They're returning their young quarterback from last season after he took over the starting job from Eli Holstein. And I feel like just overall, a lot of people might be underestimating this Pitt team. And this feels very similar to, the Louisville SMU type game of last year, late October, where Miami ended up dropping it. And I feel like that could happen again this season. And if it does, Pitt would be my pick to pull it off. Now, back-to-back road games. The first one's against Bill Belichick's North Carolina Tar Heels. And I still don't think North Carolina is going to be very good this season. They had tons of offseason hype last year. I just feel like Belichick doesn't really know how to work the college football landscape as well. And after his Hall of Fame snub, it feels like it might just be better for him to get out of coaching entirely. I wouldn't be surprised if this is his last year at North Carolina. I feel like Mario Cristobal and the Canes are going to win this one pretty easily. And then it's the rematch that a lot of people are going to be talking about, Miami and Notre Dame, the week one game that decided ultimately that the Canes were going to the national championship. This one Notre Dame fans are going to want because they, for some reason, still think that they should have been in the playoffs over Miami, even after Miami made the Natty. I think Notre Dame has a really good team for next year, though. So some of the talk that their fans have will probably be backed up by this Notre Dame team. They didn't need a big portal class, but the talent that they brought in was all really solid, mostly four stars. And in the transfer portal, a four-star is not that common as compared to high school. Just overall, CJ Carr and this Notre Dame offense is going to be scary. And I think Marcus Freeman's a really solid head coach. You give the Irish the home field advantage, and I do believe that they will be favored in this rematch.
Now, the next three games, all at home for the Hurricanes, which is pretty nice. And that kicks off with Duke, the Darian Mensah revenge game. And I think that they will be heavily favored in this one because Mensah was that entire team. I think they're losing way too much production from last year. A team that won the ACC somehow. And without Mensah, I don't really know who their starting quarterback is going to end up being. I know they brought in someone while Mensah was still looking at getting the ruling of whether he could end up transferring or not. But since the name doesn't really ring a bell to me right now, I don't really think that they were that good from wherever they came from. And I think once again, the talent Miami has is going to outweigh what Duke has. And throw in the fact that it's at home after a game against Notre Dame, they'll look to let off some steam after a tough game, whether it is a win or a loss at South Bend. Then Virginia Tech is going to be a really intriguing game because it's James Franklin's first year as the Hokies head coach. And a lot of the transfer portal is made up of Penn State players, which should surprise absolutely no one, considering that James Franklin was still a very good coach and was really kicked out for circumstances mostly out of his control. But I do think this is a game that is going to be under the radar for a lot of people. I think by this point in the season, Virginia Tech will have had a very solid year and will have been very competitive. And I think they can put up a fight on the road against this Miami team that, even though it's late in the season, is still pretty new to each other. Just the fact that they haven't had a full season together, maybe there's some issues there, considering that the Penn State guys coming from Virginia or the Virginia Tech players that are coming from Penn State have probably played together for at least a season or at least been around each other. So I think there's potential there, especially since Virginia Tech, before James Franklin, has played close games against this Miami team. So I don't know. I'm not saying that Virginia Tech is going to upset the Hurricanes, but it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people expect. So 60% chance for Miami to get out of there with a win. And then they end the year with Boston College. It's 90% chance. Boston College was horrible last year and they did not get much better. So at least on the bright side for Miami, they start the season with one of the worst teams in the ACC. They end the season with one of the worst teams in the ACC. That's a good way to end your year.
Now, looking at the overall projections, we do have Miami projected to go 9.1 wins on the season. And I mean, with this schedule, I think 9-3 would probably be a disappointment. But I mean, the way our percentages work, it kind of just ends up adding up to around one extra loss than what we're predicting, which conveniently for Miami is going to be 10-2. I do expect them to drop a game like the Notre Dame one, and then probably another one around late November or late October that nobody's really expecting. I kind of hinted at that with the Pitt game. I feel like that definitely could be a loss for the Canes this season, but their national championship odds are in the top 10, sitting at plus 1300, good for number 7 in the country. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.